Good afternoon. In our session on the Episcopal Church 101, after 22 years as a priest, I'd like to share with you my hopes for the church. Now, after the 1917-1918 pandemic, the world was eager to get back to where it was before. The pandemic lasted 2 years or longer, and at the end, churches and schools and businesses continued to churn out the same old, at least until the stock market crashed in 1929, leading to the Great Depression. But this time, I suspect we may have an opportunity. Yes, there are strong desires to go back to normal in every corner of life, and at the same time, there is a growing suspicion that we won't be able to go back to the cherished good old days. As the human population of our planet increases, global travel increases, and humans increasingly move into wild areas formerly uninhabited by humans, we will see rapidly spreading pandemics with greater frequency than one per century. This is not a pleasant thought, but we must prepare for it, or as Ben Franklin observed, failure to plan is planning to fail. Right now, we see less desire among millennials to attend church in person, even less than before. Older people want to return to in-person church, but I'm afraid that's not the future. We see the church giving and church budgets shrinking. We see the needs of the poor in our communities rising faster than nonprofits can handle. And we see church properties less utilized than ever. Meanwhile, most churches with under 150 Sunday attendance, that's before the pandemic, find themselves simply unable to afford a seminary-trained full-time rector. Like it or not, these are the hard facts confronting us. Urban areas will likely see consolidation of churches, but in rural areas, this may not be an option. For smaller, denominationally isolated congregations, the decision may come down to close or get creative. For me, closure represents a failure to live up to the commandment of Jesus to go forth and teach people to love each other as God loves them. How can small churches with meager resources stay in business? Historically, the deacons, the Greek word is diakonos, were the servants. The word means literally one who waits on tables. And the world needs more servants of all kinds, ordained as deacons or just people who are passionate about caring for others. The Episcopal Church is sacramentally oriented around baptism and Eucharist, the Lord's Supper. This would seem to be a different direction than the needs of the world for service would imply, so let's get creative. Can we define baptism as a defining moment for an individual's mission? Baptism becomes both the entrance of the person into the community of believers in the good news and the beginning of one's life of service to others. We need to bolt onto baptism the community significance of the sacrament as a greater importance than the individual component. In a similar way, can we define the Eucharist as the point where grace is multiplied instead of the usual interpretation of personal salvation? The biblical basis for this would be the disciples feeding 5,000 men plus women and children. That's multiplication versus the cross, which is personal salvation. Finally, if we go back to the ABC understanding of priestly ordination, that is, priests can absolve, bless, and consecrate. That means that all other actions of a parish priest can and probably should be done by other people. This includes running a vestry, doing administrative stuff, and even consecrating the Eucharistic elements every Sunday. Priests would be needed for doing baptisms, weddings, and funerals, but we could restructure parish ministry for smaller churches so that a full-time priest is not necessary, one per church. maybe 1 per 5. I think a return to the same old for the Episcopal Church would likely be terrible. We are being given an opportunity to redefine ourselves for the future, and all we need to do is get creative. God bless you.